to that, is that if you assume that whoever leaves your organization is going to be an ambassador of your employer brand and will have a huge impact on how you as an employer is being seen in the market in the future, you will treat that individual with very different eyes. So you don't have to only treat it from a humanitarian perspective, because that's very important, but see it as an investment from the company in every person that leaves is an ambassador of your organization. And the moment that they start complaining about you to all their friends, I promise you 5 years down the line you will find it much more difficult to attract talent. If they said, despite all the contact, I understand why this is happening. I understand why this is happening to me, and I've been treated with respect and with fairness, I think you will be known in the country as an employer that can attract talent and deals properly with their employees. So I think there's tremendous scope actually to, in this situation, to show that you're better than the rest and to actually excel, and for the future see it as a huge investment.
Thank you very much, Paul. Big hand for our panelists for sharing their views. Some very interesting and positive suggestions as to what HR can be doing in these challenging times. I would like to now offer open the discussion up to the audience. So, we would like to take questions, as many questions as we can. My request will be that if everyone can please, focus the questions on the topic at hand, so that we can have an interesting discussion around this topic and draw towards some final conclusions. So, any questions?
My question is from the point of view of the Pakistan, that how much data you have regarding the Pakistan, that how many companies are really thinking about that layoffs and please.
So are you asking about the survey itself?
Yeah.
Right. I think we can discuss the details of the survey a little later. The presentation today was more on a consolidated global basis. It is a very detailed survey, so I think I'd be very happy to meet you right after this to talk about sort of kind of more country and region specific statistics. Yeah.
I have a question for all my respected presenters. At the time, in tough times, we all share and we all lose our credits, our increments from top to bottom. But in good times, when we have the profit, why the top manager hold all the lion's share? We never share that to the bottom workers and their tail. And most of the time we share the same equal, average 8, 12, maximum 15% rise. And when we listen to their increments, we can't expect that, and we can't share that here in this hall.
Help me if I understand you correctly. What you're saying is that when times are tough, then everybody has to share equally. But when times are good, then you have an unequal distribution of the wealth. Correct, essentially. I think you're addressing an interesting principle, which is that of performance-based pay. All right, and I think that's a concept that's difficult sometimes to understand when we look at when you're looking at a basis of. Let me just give me a couple of seconds to frame myself. It can seem, I can understand that it can seem that profit sharing is something that should happen on an equal basis because everyone contributes equally to an organization's success. However, I think we need to be a little more pragmatic than that. Certain roles create much more value for the business than other roles. All participants in an organization do not create equal value, number one. Number two, some people perform better than others and need to be rewarded as such. If you do not incentivize good performance, you will not get good performance. However, if you're talking about an unfair distribution, I think that should be addressed. I think organizations should take a look at what they're doing on average with lower paid staff and what they're doing on average with higher paid staff, and make sure that there's no inequity. I can tell you that we do that in Nestle. We do look at what we're doing with the lower levels of staff and the higher levels of staff. You can't look at it in absolute rupee terms. You have to look at it in relative terms, in percentage terms, and see that you're doing the right thing. But there's no substitute for performance-based pay, because one of the things that we do is work. Why should I work? Why should I go the extra mile? Why should I exceed expectations if I'm not going to be rewarded? Would be my answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. My question is to Mr. Paul. While we just discussed about the employer branding, employer branding. So the first stage, what happens, we try to retain high potential employees, okay, and we care them for a long time. But at the latter stage of time, what we have observed in most of the organizations with respect to Pakistan, that the high potential employees, they leave organizations frequently. Recently, leading newspaper reported that 37 to 48% of the high potential employees, they have been reported that they are leaving the first ranking organizations within the country. In some of the contracts towards the multinationals and some are locals also. So what might be the factors associated that the high potential employees are leaving the high organizations, My question to Mr. Paul. Thank you.
Can I just repeat it so I capture I frame the answer positively. Your question is with regards to what explains why high potential employees are leaving organization more rapidly, correct? And I presume that you want to know then what you can do against it. Yeah. I think the reason that of course high potential employees leave is simply for that reason in itself. They've got high potential, and they've been recognized by other companies in having that high potential, and as a result the opportunities are significantly more, etc., etc., etc. They're better in networking, they're better in finding those opportunities, and therefore they're better to present themselves, and therefore they get those opportunities. So what can you do in order to stop that happening? I think the first part is very much about that. In the majority of companies that I ask, they always say, I know who are my high potential employees. That's one. But then if I ask those high potential employees, they said, I don't know that I'm a high potential employee. So first of all, it's about communication to employees in terms of that they're being seen by the organization as a critical resource. So that's the first basic step, because otherwise you talk about high potential employees and the person doesn't even know that that's the case. He only values himself rather than he knows that the company is valuing him. The second part is then obviously by designing a number of tools, a number of steps in order to engage and motivate that employee in terms of for him to be clear about what's expected from him and that he is clear what he can expect from the organization. If at the end of all of that, and that's all been done, if at the end of that individual leaves after 3 or 4 years and he regards the organization positively, I don't think, of course that's a short-term negative consequence, but I don't think it's so much of an issue. I rather have a high potential employee that commits himself more than 100% during the 4 years that he's with me, rather than a person that's with me for 15 years and has been loyal and doesn't commit himself for more than 100%. So I think it's very much to do with also a different mindset. That's not all about, I want to put golden chains around my high potential employee. Just let that employee fly, and some stage maybe he'll come back again.
A very interesting piece of research recently showed, this was done by the Corporate Leadership Council, and first of all, I completely agree with Paul. I think what he's saying is best practice.